You're listening to Michael Savage on Talk 910 KNEW.
The hero pilot, it turns out, had 6 years' experience flying F-4 Phantom jets. He's a flight instructor. This is the hero, Chesley B. Sully Sullenberger III. Experience matters. To me, it's always been quality. In order for there to be equality in America, I've always said there has to be quality. You cannot start appointing people based upon race or gender or sex or whatever, race or sex or ethnicity, without a disaster occurring, which is why America's melting down on so many levels. Now, this is not to say that it's not all white males who are destroying the economy. It is. Now, let me be very, very clear about it. The thieves at the top happen to all be white males. I mean, I'll be very honest with you. Maybe there's one exception. So, I mean, I'm pretty clear on what's going on where. But I'm talking on a day-to-day level, the elbow-thrashing level of reality, as a Buddhist once told me, is how he describes you and me in the world we live in. The elbow-thrashing level of reality. Forget about sitting in the lotus position in Marin County on a hillside going Om. You know, anybody can pretend that they're elevated sitting there, but when it comes down to flying in a jet, you'd rather have somebody who's qualified, not someone who's put in there because he looks good in the cabin. This guy's a hero. And you want to hear intuition and chance and luck in radio? I've been trying to book Clay Lacey on this show for about a week now, and his schedule didn't work, and I figured he wasn't interested. He's going to be on in about 10 minutes. Clay Lacey owns Clay Lacey Aviation. He's a man who owns the biggest jet charter service in America, and it's actually the best. But he's been a showbiz glamour pilot, a military jock, an experimental test pilot, an unlimited air race champion, an aviation record setter, a United Airlines #1 pilot, a teacher, an entrepreneur. So just today, he agreed to come on the show. And he is the most respected jet charter company operator in the country. His credits include films such as Top Gun, Flight of the Intruder, The Client, Firefox, and many of his jets are owned by the Hollywood famous, and they put him in charter through his service. So he's going to be with us. What's interesting to me is that this happened on the very same day as the hero pilot had a military background here in New York. I can't believe the confluence of events, how it's going to. He's going to answer some questions for us about experience, about what the plane's construction is, and, of course, interesting things about how the economy has affected the private jet industry. And that nature of the business, that's the main reason I had wanted him on, is the business changing. 1-800-449-8255. Let's go to WOR in New York. David, go ahead. You're on the Savage Nation.
Hi, Dr. Savage. Many of your listeners may not be aware I'm in the New York area at Bloomberg's press conference this evening. He mentioned that this pilot is not only a hero, he walked through the plane twice before he actually got off to make sure there was no one on the plane.
That's a true captain. In other words, if this man had gotten off the plane and one passenger, God forbid, had left on, and he found out afterwards they died, he probably wouldn't have been able to live with himself.
Yeah, he's a true American hero. You know, you've been talking about it for years, about how when you fly, excuse me, you want to fly with ex-fighter pilots, and it bore truth today.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly, you heard me for years. I used to joke. I'd peek in, and I hope the guy was an old white guy with blue eyes. You know what I mean? That's what I always hope for. I mean, to be honest with you, I know women can fly, but I'd rather they be an old white guy with military experience.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're always right.
Just my own little bias, you know. I have a little biases towards survival. That's all. Thanks for the call. 1-800-4. You might have said it for years. So now what? Now I have to give them all a quiz before I get on a plane? Do you or don't you have military experience? You can't even you can't look in the pilot's cabin anymore. That's good. Because of the wonderful, wonderful immigration policies. And living all in a locked camp now. Pilot can't come out to go to the bathroom. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. New York City, again, WOR. Wayne, you're up on the Savage Nation topic, please.
Always a privilege to speak to you, Dr. Savage. You know, I had the privilege of flying all over the world with Pan Am for about 10 years until some creeps decided to ruin that airline. Bunch of greedy guys. But forget, that's another story. But I want to tell you about the fuselage. We were trained every single year, twice, on all the airplanes, and we had to simulate these kinds of events. It's called a ditching. It's actually a quote-unquote, normal procedure. I mean, it doesn't mean it's always going to come off, but there's no question the pilots know exactly what to do. You're absolutely right. And as far as
now, were you a pilot or a crew member?
I was the top. In other words, I was in charge of the flight attendants. They called it a purser back then. Today, I don't know what they call it. But
so you were the guy I got the drinks from.
You got the drinks, but
I'm joking. Come on, I had many a good drinks on Pan Am with many a purser. In those days, you used to be able to drink with the passengers.
Forest Hills with my dad. We watched every plane come over into LaGuardia, and that's where I got my dream to go and do that. Now I'm a teacher. I'm taking this right into the class.
Well, Wayne, let's go back to the plane. This pilot was not an ordinary pilot because this is not an easy maneuver to ditch in a river and not break the plane up. Why do you suppose the plane didn't break up?
Dr. Savage, they're all Top Gun flyers, just like you said. They have every one of them. I sat with guys all over the world. We used to go to.
Well, what do you mean they're all? Who? Where? U.S. Airways?
No, I'm talking about every one of these pilots. That's where they get them. They get them from the military. These are the best guys on earth. They all know what they're.
Well,
doing.
Wait a minute. Not every pilot has an Air Force or military background.
Every one of them. I'm telling you. I sat with them in Cairo. I sat with them in India.
Well, now wait. You're talking about years ago, Wayne. Not today. Today, and that doesn't mean that pilots are incompetent if they didn't have military training. I'm just saying that's the extra rung. I mean, I've flown in private jets where the young guys who have no military background.
I would be less, maybe that's true, but I'd be surprised because you can't even get in if you don't have the super experience. They're not looking for, Joe Schmo that has a license to fly. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'll tell you, this guy's going to be a very sought-after private jet pilot after this with 19,000 hours. With all this experience in Gulfstream. If you owned a Gulfstream G50, 550, you'd want him to work for you, wouldn't you?
You would. These guys they eat, sleep. He would never go with a private pilot situation because they eat, sleep, and love this thing. It's like it's in your blood.
They love the passengers. They love taking care of the passengers. They love being responsible for them. They're true old world captains in that respect.
Right. But as far as that ditching, all the fuselages are designed for that. We learned about every single plane. Every single last one of them can be done with what he did with that plane today. And in fact,
obviously, he had to skim the water.
My dad had a ditch in the Pacific.
Wayne, if you skim the water, as I understand it from pilots, and I'm not a pilot, if you hit any kind of wave, it's like hitting a brick wall.
That's out in the middle of the ocean. You're talking about the Hudson River. It's basically nothing. It's a rippling pond. The Hudson River is not a big deal.
All right. So that had a lot to do with why the plane was able to, in essence, skim the water like a stone thrown across a pond.
And by the way, what you probably also don't know, because the water, a private water company, the owner saw that the guy was landing on the water. He came out with his ferries, a private ferry that goes from New Jersey to Manhattan daily with the commuters. He went out there with 3 or 4 of his boats, and they unloaded all the passengers onto those things and got them over to New York City for.
Yeah, no, I saw that on TV. They just volunteered. In other words, they didn't wait for a government contract.
This is New York City.
Yeah, in other words, they didn't call Obama to see if they can get a little grift to send out the ferries. They just did it to save the passengers. I was very amazed by that they didn't need Mayor Bloomberg to write a certain script to reimburse them.
No, shit.
Thanks for the call. I'm itching already for the comment. It could be the niacin. I don't know, but I got an itch from that conversation. Well, here we are. Don't ask, don't tell. Do ask, do tell. It does matter. They say experience matters. It certainly did in this case today. And now we're talking in a few minutes, the minute I come back, in less than a few minutes, with Clay Lacy. And you're going to say, well, that's an amazing story. He runs the nation's most respected jet charter company out of Los Angeles. And the reason I have him on is because I wanted to talk about how has the economy affected the private jet charter industry. And I wanted to have you, the listener, ask questions about private jets. Some of you will fly in them from time to time, but most of you dream of flying in a private jet. And I thought having the number one person in the country with the biggest company, the best company, the safest company on the show would be interesting. And I wanted to ask him some questions, so he'll be with us right here on the Savage Nation. I think you'll be very, very pleased.
Savage.